Today I'm going to talk about lists in Android. So you've done, I assume, the first application, which is a temperature converter. You can also now we're gonna look at lists and how to display lists. So for that we're going to create a new Android project. Other. This is right-click New, then go to Other. Android application project. I'm just going to show you how list views work. So this is going to be a list view test, or any name that you want. I'm just going to leave the defaults except for that one. Just there's really no point in changing these things. I'm not going to change any icons, nothing. We're just going to go directly to, it's going to be a blank activity. We're just going to go directly into our project. The main activity is going to be called main activity. That's fine. And the name XML, the main XML file for the screen layout is going to be activity main. That's fine. You can call these whatever you want, but I'm just leaving defaults in order to just go directly to the project. So it opens list view test. That's my new project with my activity main, so I can design it. So the first thing I'm going to do here is delete this hello world. I selected and hit delete. And I'm going to put a list view in here. Okay, the list views are in form widgets in composite. So composite, I'm going to go to list view. Okay, and I'm just going to put it here. That's fine. So it's there. Now I can place it wherever I want. Usually that's a good place, and then I'll try to fit the screen if I go over. But I can also restrict it, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items. Okay, that's fine. So I just put it there, just so you know how the XML looks like. What the XML looks like, it looks like this. There's a relative layout, which is my screen, and then there's a list view called ListView 1. Okay, that it's as wide as the parent and as high as the parent, right? And the lines with the bottom and the right and to the right. That is my list view. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to control this list view with my main from my main activity. Now, list views have two major components. This list, the one that I'm going to create, is going to contain people's names, just to populate it with something. Okay. Now, list views are populated with something called an adapter. Okay, a data source adapter, an adapter. The adapter is the one that is in charge of cycling through the different cells, or cycling through the contents of your data source, and then delivering the list view a cell to display here. So for each, say I have an array of names, for each one of those names I should be able to return a cell for an individual cell for the list view. That's what the data source does. The data adapter. I'm sorry. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create this data adapter. Okay, I'm going to make it really simple. I'm just going to take an array, and based on the elements of that array, it's going to return a list. Now, all list views, you must know, have items. These items are actually another layout. You can put buttons here, checkboxes, images, whatever you want. So these are individual views. These are individual layouts, and that is very important because within these layouts, this item 1 thing here is actually a text view. Okay, so the list view is composite because it's composed of many layouts, or one layout repeated many times, which is the layout for each individual item. In this case, the default has it looks like this, right? This item 1, sub item 1 that I have here. So a list view is comprised of many repeated layouts, and each of those layouts has a text view in it and then another text view in it. Okay, we're going to make use of that. Just keep that in mind. Alright, let's code our adapter. So the main thing to code an adapter is we're going to create a new class. We're going to call it string array adapter. Okay, it's going to inherit here from basic adapter. Oops, it's going to a base adapter, not a base adapter. Okay, it's going to extend a base adapter, and we're going to inherit the abstract methods. Make sure that this option here is checked. And we'll take a look at this class. So now this class, this is what the adapter looks like. First, in order to create the list, the system needs to know how many items are going to be there. Now, this getItem and getItemID are not very relevant, but if I want to get an item based on, say, a position, right, then I should return this int arg0 is actually the position at which this item is. But this is the main method that we want to override, this getView. Remember, each list view is comprised of little cells, okay, and those cells are views, they're layouts on their own right? So for each view at a given position, okay, for each view at a given, each cell at a given position, I will need inside here, I will need to create the cell, so I'll put it here. Create the cell, which is a view, right? Create the cell and populate it with an element of the array. Okay, it's the array that I'm gonna have as the data source. So let's do this. Okay. Because this is a string array adapter, I will somehow need here a string array, right? String array names, that's going to be my underlying data source. Now, for me, in order to programmatically create views, like for example cells, so for me to programmatically create a view in a program, I need a context. The context is basically a synonym of the application. I need, or the activity. I need to know which activity I'm creating the cells into, okay, or these cells inside. I need to know which activity, has the list view in which I'm going to put the cells, right? So, and that is called a context. So I'm going to have a variable here, an instance variable called of the kind context, Android context, called ctxt, just for brief. And the other thing that I need to retrieve the cells from the XML layout, okay, is a layout inflator. This is a new thing. Is whenever I want to access a component in an XML, I can do a find view by ID. But if I want to create components, okay, if I want to create components based on a layout, so for example, I have a little layout with images and text and whatnot, and that's going to be a cell. I have a little XML file for that, right? If I have that, well, how do I repeat that layout multiple times? How do I create that layout and repeat it? For that, I would need an object called a Layout Inflator. So I will create one Layout Inflator, my inflator, and that's going to be a Layout Inflator. Okay. Now, my base adapter, I need to pass the string that I want, right? I need to create a constructor here where I can pass a string of names, for example, for this adapter. So I will have a constructor public string array adapter, and I'm going to receive a string array and called R and a context. So this will allow me to set up the list of names and which activity contains the list view that I need to populate. So what I will do is names equals R and ctxt equals C, and I will call this C. So there's no ambiguity here. So I have done that. Now I'm going to create also a layout inflator, right? So my inflator is I'm going to use XML and I'm going to use objects that should be in the context C, that activity, right? So, and to create a new layout inflator, I'll do this, layout inflator. Okay, I'm going to cast something to a layout inflator, and what I'm going to cast is C dot get system service context dot layout inflator service. So again, to have an inflator available, this is what's going to turn XML stuff into Java objects, so then I can with a for loop, for example, I can repeat them programmatically. It's going to be a Layout Inflator, get system service, context, Layout Inflator service. Okay? Alright, so I have my constructor, everything's in place. Now I just need to go and add these things. So get count. What is the count of, what's the number of elements that I'm going to provide the list? Well, it's my arrays.length, right? So whatever the names array contains, .length. That's the count of objects. If I want to get an item at the given position, this is position. I don't know why they say arg0, but it's position. Well, I'm going to return names at that position, right? And then here, get item ID. Well, we're not going to use the item ID, so you can return 0 for all of them. It doesn't really matter. You can just return the arg0, which is the position, right? So let's say that the position is their ID. And now here's the core thing here. We're gonna implement this Getview method. This Getview method, I will just put an implementation and show you how it is implemented. What all of it means. So what we're going to do here is we are going to first view arg1. Arg1 is my view. I brought stuff from a different place, arg0. Okay, and the text view. I will import text view Android. Okay, so here's what I'm going to explain what I just copied. I'm going to say, well, if the position, if arg1, if the view is null, basically if there's nothing in the table, I'm going to first create a simple view cell by inflating a layout for each cell. Okay, now Android has a default layout for each cell, for each item, right? So it's called android.r. This is not just r dot, it's android.r.layout.simple list item 1. Okay, that's the default Android list item. Okay, then just do this arg2. That's the parent of this element, and then say false. So my inflator.inflate. This, okay. Now I'm gonna remember the layout had a first text and then a subtitle in it, right? So the first text is a text view, and it's called android.r.id.text1. That is the default text. Okay, you should Google the android.r objects. They are default objects in all of Android widgets and views. So I'm going to create a name text view, which is arg1, basically this cell. Now find view by ID, android.r.id.text1. I'm not creating a new one. In this case, is the text1 that is associated to the simple list item 1. That's why I don't use inflate. If I wanted to create a text view from a layout for a text view or something like that, I would say inflate. But because I'm using the one that is already in arg1 in that view, I just say find view by ID. I will set the text to names arg0, so the name and the position that was requested, and return arg1. That's going to be my string adapter. Okay. Now, lastly, sorry this video is taking longer than expected, but lastly, the one thing that I want to do is in this activity is I'm going to basically tie this adapter to the list view that I created. Recall that in my activity main, this list view, if you go to, the ID is ListView1, id.ListView1, okay? That's going to become important. So what I'm going to do here in the onCreate method, ignore the method below that, is first I'm going to create some names, right? So string array values equals Peter, Paul, Mary, James, Nancy, Harry. Okay, some names. Okay, just create an array. This can be whatever your data source is coming from, the web, wherever. You just create, you know, an array of values, and then you say you have a list view, LV. Now this is going to be a list view, which is going to come from find view by ID, right? Because this activity represents the main layout that I have. Within that layout, I'm going to find a component there, a view by ID, and the ID is r.id. Whoops, r.id. I don't have an ID. r.layout perhaps. Layout.activity main. No. You know what happens? I need to save this. I'll save this activity main. Now I'm going to the activity that controls that. r.id.listView1. There it is. Okay. So my list. I'm going to create a list view component here that comes from ListView1. Then I will create a new string array adapter AD. It's going to be a new string array adapter, and the array is going to be the values, right? And the context that I will provide, the context will be this activity, because this activity is the one tied to the layout that contains that list view. Okay? And then I will say listview dot set adapter, and my adapter is called AD. Alright, and that is it. I have created an adapter that can go to any data source. In this case, it went to an array of strings, and has methods that the list view will use to populate itself. So I create the adapter and I attach it to the list view, and then when I run this application, run as Android application, save changes, yes. When I run this application in my emulator, we will see a list view with all the names. So we wait a little bit and it'll be up. And here are all the names, right? If I put more names, they're going to fill up over here, and then I can scroll up and down. That's it about views.